Hi everyone, this is Carol Duffy, Senior Play Therapist in Tusla, and I'm here to give you our first installment of the actual play ideas to accompany the introduction video I just made for you. So I thought I'd start with a short whistle-top tour around the science, or some of the science at least, because there's a lot of it, around the benefits of play and why it's so effective and why it can be really helpful when we're thinking about play to start off by thinking about sensory or somatic play that involves the use of our body. So it's not product orientated, it's not about creating something in particular. It can be, but first and foremost, it's really about how we activate or engage the senses and how that can soothe our physiology. And what that means is that our emotions is very much connected to our nervous system. Okay, they're really much the development of the both happen in sync with one another. Okay, and what can happen for children and indeed many adults is that when we're going about our business every day, certain situations or sensory input can become overwhelming. And that depends on lots of different things. It depends on how much that person has already taken in that day, their temperament, history of trauma, their developmental stage, the stage of the day. I want you to think about if somebody said something to you just before you ate your dinner and your core state is dysregulated because you're starving, how strong is your ability to tolerate something disruptive then versus when you've just had your meal and you're full and you're happy and you're feeling nice, content again. Well, it's the same for children, but in fact it's magnified because children haven't developed a mature anti-anxiety system. And by the same token, as we all have different preferences for food or drink or holidays or whatever it is that we gravitate towards and kind of gravitate away from, it's the same for our sensory preferences. So you will often hear me talk about developing an a la carte menu of sensory play ideas or an a la carte menu of just play ideas so that we have an array of resources to choose from. That promotes your ability as a parent to really get to know your child better because there are not always many versions of you or their other parent or their aunt or their uncle or grandparent. They're their own person with their own set of wants and likes and dislikes. And what can also happen, and what can add to the stress if you have a child who has had a sensory overload or is finding their capacity to respond to their sensory input during the day more challenging than another day. So you're seeing more meltdowns, more outbursts, or kind of more quiet, shutting down types of behavior. What can add to that is if we try to help, but we miss a tune. The best way to describe misattunement is if you think about a small infant who's crying for their milk and you think they're tired, so you try to put them down. How do you think they're going to respond? Usually with increased stress and crying, which will more than likely lead to increased stress and maybe even crying for you. So when we attune, when we get it right, when we feel the feelings of the child as they're trying to create in us through their non-verbal cues, we are more likely then to respond in the way that fits them best. And we're constantly learning about that. That's why when we develop a little fidget kit with an array of sensory items in it, it really promotes our capacity to get to know our child's sensory preferences, what they like and what they like at different times. So I'm just going to show you a few simple items that I have in my sensory box. So I have a squeezy ball. This one is spiky, okay? And you can even hear it makes a sound. Some children are going to really like that rough feeling and the proprioceptive feedback that this ball gets, because it doesn't squeeze that easy, can give stronger resistance. Proprioceptive feedback through the muscles and the joints and the tendons can really soothe our nervous system, and sometimes it can wake it up. So that's where you start to notice and really pay attention to what does my child reach for most commonly. And you don't have to wait for an eruption or a meltdown or something to go wrong to use these types of materials. In fact, I would say have them readily available, and you will start to see your child's own sensory seeking systems show themselves to you all the time, you'll start to notice your own. You'll start to realise things you reach for. It can be a handy kit to have available during times when you're doing homework, which glad to say nobody will be doing over the summer, or even dinner time, or times when you're trying to get dinner ready and their body needs something to do when you're preoccupied and you can't give them their full attention. Or also after a rupture, after there has been an upset or some interruption to the harmonious atmosphere of your home. So this is a sensory ball that's really helpful. You can also have balls that give less resistance. This one you can squeeze even more, but you can see there's different textures, so it activates more of my senses. Another child might want something softer. So you'll often see these on the tops of pencils. So it gives you different textures, different sensations. Is my child looking for something soft and gentle, or are they looking for something that's a bit stronger and gives them more feedback? Really simple things, foolproof to add. Any of you who have bubble wrap, being able to have bubble wrap available can be a really positive. It gives lots of proprioceptive feedback through the fingers and through the hands, and it can feel really satisfying to have that burst. You might also see your child want to do a big, so they're using even more of their body and their hands there. So that can really give a calming or an alerting experience for your child, which can help them move into a really optimal, just right way of being in the world. Other things that are really helpful to have, you can often see these in thrift stores, €2 shops, or little arts and crafts. This is a really handy one, and it increases challenge because it slips through your hands and you have to try and catch it. Whoa, it slipped through my hands right there. Things that I also find really, really helpful to have in a sensory kit is any of you who have crackers at Christmas time, or use like little lucky bags for birthday parties. You can see these little things. I'll see if I can angle the camera so you can see. This is a great little tool to have. And that requires quite a bit of concentration from a child to be able to spin, but they're foolproof. And even if they don't spin it, they can just like the sensory feel. It's quite hard and it's shiny, and it attracts more than one sense again, because you've got touch and you've got what you can see, your vision being activated there. So that's two really, really simple ones. Play-Doh, foolproof, because you can just use it to squish and squash, or you can actually use it to create something. And then the play could even elaborate into some game where you've made two little characters and they can begin a little conversation with one another. Either way, it's a lovely sensory material to have available in your sensory play kit, okay, or your fidget kit. Memory foam is another really lovely one. And again, it depends. Different children like different things. That's why it's really advisable to have a number of different materials available for your child so that they can choose from. It supports your capacity then to attune to them. And you can build up a very positive and a very strong shared language then with your child, where you start to notice you like the stuff that's harder. Or I notice when you're hungry, you like to squeeze that ball. And I notice when you're thinking or when you're planning, you like to use the Play-Doh. Or I notice when you're a bit bored, you start to shake things. So a little maraca there as well. So all sorts of things that can be available. Again, these little snakes that you get with the squeezy eyeballs that pop out, that can give lots of proprioceptive feedback. And as well, it's really attractive to the eye. So you've invited the child in by having visually aesthetic materials available to them. Here's two more. These will give them much stronger. They won't squeeze at all. Sensory balls that have glitter inside of them, and lots of children just enjoy watching that move around, and it can be quite calming. So it can be a really nice activity to pull out after there's been a rupture or some kind of interruption in the day. Okay, as I said, proprioceptive feedback that gives you resistance and like a strong message through the muscles and the joints can be really calming or alerting. You have to watch how your child approaches it to figure out what suits them best. But you can get resistance bands in a lot of thrift stores, or €2 shops, or exercise stores, and having to pull that between their hands can really give some good resistance, and it's a really good sensory toy to have available in any sensory or fidget kit. You can get different levels of resistance. So it's really important that you have materials that your child can actually manipulate, that they can actually use, that they're not out of their reach or that will cause a problem for them and add to the rupture or add to the dysregulation. And then finally, I'm just going to show you really nice box that you could put it in. You often see these available, or smaller versions of it, and it has those sequins that move up and down. That in itself, the container for the sensory kit, can give a really lovely soothing or alerting, depending on your child. Some people find this really soothing, some people find it really wakes up their senses. What you're looking for is the opportunity for your child to have an array of materials available to them that can soothe their senses and bring them into a just right way of being. And it can be really good to move into repair with your child, engaging with some of these materials after there has been some kind of an interruption for them or between you both. And I'm going to share this to the page as well. It's based on Dr. Bruce Perry's 3 R's, which tells us a little bit about why we start with those somatosensory play ideas, which are rooted and really activate the lower regions of our brain. The reason for this, just really quickly, is that the lower regions of our brain is where our anxiety and core state regulation is taken care of. So if we try to talk to a child about that, we're using this top region of our brain. But when their anxiety is activated or some core state dysregulation has occurred for them, whether they're feeling under the weather or whether they're just tired or they're overstimulated, then if we target our approach, our help towards the top part of our child's brain, then we're literally missing our target. It'd be like going into hospital and having and needing an operation on your right arm, but your left arm was operated on instead. You're not going to be a very happy camper when you leave. Well, the same thing happens for the child. If we target the wrong area, we're more likely to increase the stress at worst. At best, they'll just feel unattended. It won't really help. But like I say, at worst, it can increase the stress. So this will be available, and it just gives you a little short snippet around what's going on when we regulate a child, what kind of things we need to think of, how we then move into relationship, bring the child back into that comfortable, safe haven of the relationship, and then how we can move then, and only then, to the teaching, where we get to reflect and talk about it and build up that more sophisticated cognitive reflective capacity in your child's brain, where they can think about or talk about what they did. So have a go at making a little sensory kit for yourselves. You might want to put some abrasive sponges in there. You might want to put some nice food items in there that are soothing or alerting, some chewing gum, which can be really good. Chewing can be really regulating, or a nice little square of chocolate that they can suck and relax on. Or you might want to add some other materials around your house, cut off some velvet, feather, cotton balls, some soothing hand lotion. Be as creative as you like. Because once you start activating the senses, you start activating your own play system, and you start to see way more play opportunities in your home. So try and put a bit of play in your day today and enjoy it. See you next time.